What's up you guys, my name is Patrick, this is Elevated Fabrics, and this is my 1985 4Runner, and now we're finally building this thing into the off-road monster I've always wanted. We painted it, we built the bumpers, sliders, all the armor, and this week we are getting this thing mechanically dialed to take on some of the hardest trails in North America. Let's dive into what we have planned for today. So clearly we have a big pile of parts to get under this thing, but first things first, we're gonna focus on the rear end. We have these Chevy 63-inch springs out of a half-ton Chevy truck. We have the whole Chevy 63 swap kit from Sky's Off-Road Design. We have a full set of axle shafts, chrome ollie axle shafts from Trail Gear, differential armor for the front, differential armor for the rear, and a truss. We have some used Bilstein shocks, U-bolt flip kit. We have a flat pitman arm because that was an issue all the way back to the very first video when we were trying to trim the front fenders. And then a starter because, well, it only starts sometimes. So all that being said, let's get this thing in the air, start to rip out the rear end, and hopefully finish this thing today. All right, so now that we have this thing up in the air, what we're gonna do is we're gonna drop the axle, leaf spring, shocks, all as a unit, and then I can start cutting off the existing leaf spring mounts front and rear to get ready for the new Chevy 63 mounts. Again, we got those from Sky's Off-Road. Huge shout out to those guys. They've been supporting me all the way back when I was building motorhomes, and now we're building rock crawlers, so it's sick to have them along the whole way. So yeah, drop it down, lift it back up without anything attached, and start cutting stuff. Bigger breaker bar. That's all. Cool. That should come out now. So the rear leaf spring front hangers are, well, the bushing is absolutely seized to the bolt that goes through it. So we can't just slide the bolt out to drop the leaf spring. So I'm gonna cut off all the U-bolts that hold the leaf spring to the axle. And once the leaf spring's free from the axle, we'll drop the axle, pull the leaf spring out, it'll all work great. But we do have to cut the U-bolts off. All right, leaf spring's out. Now we just got to pull the drive shaft. I should have done the drive shaft while it was in the air. You know, hindsight. Drive shaft is out. Now that we have these leaf springs out of the way, we're gonna go ahead and get ready for the new Chevy 63 swap kit from Sky's Off-Road Design. We're gonna cut the old shackle hangers off both sides. We will end up cutting the front leaf spring hangers off, but first we're gonna use them to get a measurement to mount the new hangers, 11 inches eye to eye back. So for a older pickup that has 48-inch springs, you want 11 inches. For the newer pickups like 89 and above, it's 9.5 inches, I believe. And then for the Tacomas, 98 and above, it's 7.5 inches. There's plenty of threads online to give you exact measurements as to where these go. But I know mine's 11 inches. So we'll prep this frame here, cut those off, start welding these on, and hopefully weld them square so that we're not going down the road all crooked. So let's get to grinding. Gone. One more. These are the shackle hangers. The front is a spring hanger, just so you know. So while the Chevy 63 spring swap is popular on Toyotas, you can use it on any rock crawler or any truck. You just want a little bit more articulation in the rear, and also a solid set of pretty heavy duty springs. They're from a half ton, you can get them from a 3/4 ton or even a 1 ton, I believe. They're all the same. Right now what we're doing is measuring center to center on our spring perches, so we know exactly where to put the spring hangers on the frame relative to the frame location. I've measured about 72 times, but we'll do one last measurement. We have 12 inches. So that's what we wanted. That's what we're getting. Everything's looking good. We will tack this in place pretty good because we don't want it to go anywhere, because we're gonna actually have to get it all together. The front hangers, the rear shackle mounts, get the shackles on, the springs on, and bolt that all to the axle so that we can set it down, look at our shackle angle, and make sure the tire is centered where we want it. And if it's not, we can move this forward or backwards. If the shackle angle is no good, but we like where the placement is in the wheel well, we can move this forward or backwards, the shackle hanger. So there's a lot of adjustability here. And a lot of this is personal preference. I am gonna try and center in this wheel well since we've already clearanced this wheel well. If you haven't already clearanced your wheel well, but you're going to much larger tires, it's kind of a you thing. You can either push it back and just cut behind, you can cut the wheel well center, But if you're going up to 37s or a larger tire such as that on a rig like this and you want all the articulation, you're gonna be trimming. So, all that being said, we're gonna tack this in place, do the same thing over there, start messing with the shackles and get these springs in, because want this thing to flex like crazy. This is the most important part of this swap, is making sure that this hole, the hole for your leaf spring, the front of your leaf spring, it's square to the other one, because if you get this measurement off, you're gonna be dog tracking, like your axle is gonna be pushing you sideways down the road. So you want this measurement to be right. You can mess up a lot of measurements in this and it's gonna be okay, but this is the measurement you wanna triple check, quadruple check. The first one doesn't matter as much, but you really need to match the second one to the first one so that everything is square and true to the car's chassis and everything's happy going down the road, because it can get bad quick. I have now measured this probably no less than 20 times, and I'm pretty confident that this is where it's gonna go and it's gonna be good. I'm actually really confident. So I measured the OD of these two spring perches like this. We are looking for 39.5 center. That's what we have here. So we're good there. We have the exact same number down to less than a 16th for this spring hanger and that spring hanger. So now we can weld this one on, make sure that this is, again, in plane with the rest of the frame, square to the frame. Anyway, yeah, we're gonna get this welded in and move on. Yeah, this spring. Oh. I should have done this beforehand, but we need to drill out the leaf spring hangers to 9/16 since we're using stock Chevy bushings for now. Probably forever, because it's a rock crawler. So one thing to note is some people do take out the overload, which is this insanely beef one right here, but they mainly do that for more articulation, and I mean that's mainly it, is more articulation. What we are gonna do more than likely, I haven't decided fully yet, is we're leaving the overload because we don't have bump stops and we likely won't have bump stops, and it will keep these springs from twisted into S's. They like flex so much they get bent if you don't have bump stops, but the overload leaf helps prevent that quite a bit. We have leaf springs halfway in. How exciting. All right, let's get the shackles on here and do the thing. So now we are putting the shackle hangers together, putting the bushings in them, the sleeve, and once we have this all together, we're gonna get the last of our hardware, come over here and put it all together. And in doing so, when we put it up against the frame, we can get an idea of what the shackle angle is gonna be like, and hopefully it's what we need. So there's a couple 100 pounds I'd like to put in the back of this to see where this sits at ride height before we get carried away and fully weld in the shackle hanger. Man, I built my bumper limiting my leaf springs. Yeah. Less than ideal, folks. But I don't know, who knows? This could be perfect. I don't know. It's been a while since I've done Chevy 63s. Oh, I got spit on you guys.
I see it.
I know. We have our shackle hangers up and where we want them. I've measured these only twice because they do not matter near as much. All they do is really determine the shackle angle. I mean, I'm sure they matter more than I'm giving them credit for, but you can really, this one's not near as crucial. I'm gonna give them a good tack here, good tack on one corner there, make sure everything is square. I'm gonna weld, tack strongly, okay? Tack weld strongly. Words are hard some days. It's gonna be great. Maybe put a hat on, some hair. Oh, you know what? Now's the time. So I'm gonna put a hat on, but I'll show you guys what you have been missing. There's 50,000 friends I have on YouTube now that have no clue, and I'm actually a long-haired hippie. Yeah, that's crazy, right? I have hair about down to my waist. This is what it looks like. So for anyone curious what was up there, this is it. I'm gonna put it away again, and you probably won't see it for another few months. But if this video, for whatever reason, if you guys wanna see this gone, if you guys get me 50,000 likes, I will chop the mane. And for 75,000 likes, I'll shave my face too, but that's gonna take a lot more. That ain't happening. You're not getting 75K. I bet that we see 50. Hair at 50, face is 75. You can see me looking like a baby. All right, I'm gonna weld this in. All right, now we can put the springs back on and see if we can't get some flex action out of it and make sure our shackles are good, make sure ride height's good, just make sure it's good. Beautiful. Now we can use our U-bolt flip plates that we also got from Skies Off-Road. Sick. Our U-bolt plate fits right over it, no modifications necessary, and I believe after looking at how thick this is and what we're gonna have left over on the U-bolt, it's gonna fit with the overload, with the old axle, mint. And now we are putting the axle, oh, I pinched myself. That's gonna be a blood blister. But we're putting the axle back, even with blood blisters. Dang, that hurt. All right, let's see if we can get this right the first time. Ow. U-bolt plates on, we got the U-bolts in, everything's looking good down here. Now that we're done getting the springs mounted, I was gonna go flex it all prematurely, but we're gonna go ahead and get these from Skies Off-Road Design welded up right here. These are the lower shock mounts. They're just big beefcake ones that drop it down a little further so you can fit a little bit longer of a shock in, and we're going for as long of a shock as possible. These are beefcake enough that they can get smashed by rocks, and I'm not too concerned. So we'll get one welded on here, one welded on here, and think about cutting holes in there because that's where the shocks are gonna go, just through the floor. That is it. I can take numbers. So it's fully flexed out right now, and we're actually perched on the inner wheel well, so a bump stop wouldn't hurt us. I'm gonna take some numbers for the rear shocks, take some numbers for the front shocks, and maybe take a number for a bump stop because we're quite literally sitting on the inner wheel well. That's our bump stop right now, and I don't want to rub off all my nice paint. Well, sometimes you get the brand new merch that you're pitching dirty. But today we have merch drop. Again, same merch as last week. This is the OG shirt. I'm really only doing one run of these and it'll be over. And then this is the classic Sun Raider shirt. I've had this logo for a long time. Same front, signature Elevated Fabrics. Then we have Elevated Fabrics hat, Elevated Fabrics other hat. And then, oh, no water bottles yet. That'd be sick, huh? We got Elevated Fabrics sticker, Elevated sticker, and the OG Sun Raider sticker. And there's one more smaller fabric sticker. I just lost it because we were rock crawling. If you buy a sticker pack just to support me, I really appreciate you, but we're throwing random stickers in all these orders. If you order a hat, t-shirt, and t-shirt, we're getting stickers. But yeah, thank you guys so much. It really means the world to me that you get to support me through my merch, and I plan on doing like 4Runner merch. Look at this thing. Look at this thing. We're gonna put this on a shirt. I mean, where it belongs. Toyota shirt Toyota, topless Toyota on a shirt. All right. Back to the regular schedule programming. When we went outside and flexed this thing out after we got both the shock tabs welded on, I took some numbers. Full compression from right here where this bolt hole is, it's just a random point, to the center of the shock was 19.5, and full droop was 28.25. So on flex, we only need 10 inches of shock, but when we're out like this, we have 30 inches from there. So we're just going to use this as our long measurement and 19.5 as our short measurement. So it's looking like 10.5 inches would do. A 12-inch shock would suffice, but we have 14s. And we're gonna build the upper coil bucket, like a coil bucket, not a shock mount, because we will 3-link this or 4-link this eventually. When we do that, this will be ready to accept a coilover, bottom and top. So now we get to cut a hole in the floor. I'm gonna cut off the exhaust right here for now, and then we will mark where we want to cut, drill a few holes up so we can see it while we're in the cab. We'll cut the hole, start making the shock tower. It's exciting, and also like, wow, we're cutting holes in my nice 4Runner. It wasn't nice, but I made it nice, and now we're cutting holes in it, making it less nice. It's a back and forth we have. We don't need that where we're going. So straight up is appetizing because it's a 1-to-1 dampening and 1-to-1 travel up and down on the axle. The part that makes it unappetizing for me is this LSVP valve. that is right in the way. We're not using this anymore, so in theory, we could plug one and do all sorts of craziness, but I'd rather not mess with this at all. We're torn here, I'm torn. This is what I want. This is what I'm presented with. So, against my better judgment, I am going to move the LSVP and try and make room for a shock tower. And the shock can go right here where it used to be. All right, LSVP out of the way. OTW. So we are now marking out the total area that we're going to be cutting out of this. It's kind of a big hole, but it's also not that big of a hole considering we are prepping this for coilovers one day. Grinder time. I'd say that is plenty of room for a shock mount. Coilover should fit, no problem. All right, cut the other side out and build some shock mounts. I'm actually excited now. I don't know why. I went from scared to excited all over again. What are you doing? Putting a bolt in through the floor. Sick. How sweet. Obviously, we won't have this much shock showing inside, but point being is we have shock. How sweet. What do you think?
It's crazy looking.
It'll probably end up being like, I think right there-ish. Not too ridiculous. Just through the floor a little bit. So after some maths and stuff, at full compression on this side, measuring from this point to this shock mount, we have 19.5 when it's fully flexed out further than we'll ever have it. Right now we're sitting at 23.5, which means we need 4 inches of shock showing. But I am actually, since we have such an extra long shock, going to leave 6 inches of shock shaft showing, and that should still let us fully droop out with flex and fully go up without having any interference issues. So we're just gonna set this to 5.5 or so, 6 inches of shaft showing where we make our upper mount. Do that on both sides. This thing should have rear shocks, springs, and be ready for the trails. You tell me when this says 6 inches of shaft. There? Down? All right, my sketch is kind of rough, but we're good. And I think it's gonna be dialed in, and I think it's gonna be plenty strong. Who's in whose way here? Who's in whose way here? Get out of here. I'm plasma cutting. This new TRK Fab fixture table makes it ridiculously easy to build stuff like this. Oh, and if you don't turn on your gas, you get very awful welds. That's what you get there. Still learning this whole fixture table nonsense, so don't laugh at me if I do it wrong. Any tips or tricks are greatly appreciated. Not too bad, huh? I know it's not a TIG weld, but my MIG welds are pretty decent. This is hot, so I'm gonna set it down. So what we have here is 4 shock tabs. We're gonna round the corners a little bit because we don't have a CNC table. We're working on it. If you're listening, anyone who's willing to sponsor me a CNC table, I will use it almost every single video. Anyway, we got 4 shock tabs. We're gonna grind them down, drill a 1/2 inch hole in them, and we will weld them where we need to weld them. And then our shock tower bucket things will be pretty well done. Now we drill. Made 4 of these fancy shock tabs. They're actually not that fancy at all, but they do the job. And what I have here is 1.5 inches, which is a shock width worth of spacer. And we'll set this here. We'll make sure it's centered this way. We're wanting 3 inches from the back of this out to the center of this. Maybe 3 1/8, you know, it's all give or take in this world. 2.5 is the center there. So we are good. We'll weld this in. We'll do the same thing with this one, and we can finally get these beefcake coil mounts installed. Dude, what a freaking setup though, man. This is baller. These shock mounts came out absolutely insane. And they look good from up here. They look good from down here. The used 7100s or 5165s that we got, they're pretty good shocks. These are strong enough to be coil buckets when the time comes. Maybe we'll do a strut bar when we do 3-link it. We need to pull this thing back on the lift, take everything apart, weld everything in because everything is working. And we also need to still put in the 488 rear diff with the lunchbox locker, diff armor, and I believe that's it for the rear end. We got all of this welded up. It's all on here, super tight, strong, not going anywhere. We did only get 3 welds on the front hanger over there. You know, the fuel tank's in the way. I really don't feel like dropping the tank, and I'm not gonna weld any closer than I already have. I'm gonna wait for this to cool down just a little bit more. These coil buckets came out so sick. What about making this rig just at all times ready for coil springs or leaf springs, depending on the trail or the trip? Need extra weight, got leaf springs. Need extra flex, you got coils. Probably will never do that. Moving on, we have the rear diff over here, the whole rear axle. We're gonna tear it apart. We're gonna put this trail gear small diff cover on this one. We have the Skies Off-Road lower shock mounts, and then we have a 488 diff that we got actually a few years back from LCE. So we have all the Toyota companies helping us out here, and it's very cool to see that. So strip this down, weld this on, weld those shock mounts on, pull the axle shafts, put a diff in it. We're just about done for tonight. Get this thing done. All right, now I have to wait for it to cool, or else we'll warp and bend the axle, and we'll all be sad. If anyone knows anyone who wants to promote their epoxy floor business in New Mexico, I will give you the biggest shout out if you hook it up and help me out with some epoxy. It's not the prettiest oil, I'll give it that. Nice. Okay. All right. Get the rest of the oil out of this thing, clean out the inside of it, clean off the mating surface, put some RTV on there, and put our new diff in. So within this bucket is a differential, and if I messed up, we only have one of them. Front. Yep, this is a 488 with a lunchbox in it. Happy days. We didn't mess up and bring the wrong diff. Should have one more right there. Clean this thing up, put it in, we're good to go. Oh, it's tight fit. Did it though. Now I need it held right there. All right, there we go. Hoorah. Ugh. That's It's been a minute since I've had a lunchbox. We are now ready to reinstall this rear diff, rear axle. We have everything painted. We have the locker installed. We have our trail gear diff armor installed. So now all we have to do is put these Chevy 63s back up under here. Our shock towers are welded out. We're dialed. We're ready to go. So we'll get this all assembled, get the rear end back on its own weight, put the drive shaft back in, and we will move up front. We're just gonna pull the front axle right away, get the diff armor on there, get the front axle shafts, the long fields that we have for that, strip the thing, put the truss, all that's from Trail Gear. They hooked it up. That's super sweet to have access to work with these awesome companies. These are chromoly. This is from Skies Off-Road Design. This is full billet. It's a flat steering arm. And yeah, we obviously have a few more things to still get under this truck, But we are making great progress, and hopefully today this thing will be close to done mechanically, other than under the hood. We have a whole plethora of stuff to put under the hood that we got from LTE. So let's get her done. Oh, should have lowered it a little bit.
Nice speed. Here we go.
I'm ready. So yeah, lowered the axle down, put some U-bolts on it, get them relatively tight. We're not gonna tighten those all the way down because we still need to put bump stop mounts on the U-bolts because we don't have our bump stops here yet, but we have everything but the bump stops ready, so we'll get it all patched up, move up to the front, pull the front axle, and put new chrome ollie axle shafts in, which is exciting. I've never actually had chrome ollie axle shafts. I've just broken all my normal axle shafts. All right, little U-bolt action. We have a leakage situation, and I forgot to preventively get the things. See, you put it inside. Vacuum caps can be also vacuum plugs. Brake line plug. Okay, one more thing I have to do. Yay! Just like that, in a matter of 20 minutes, we have the rear axle in and the front axle out. Solid axle, thanks.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. We got this thing out, we got the wheels off of it. We need to blow out the axle shafts because we have some super sick chrome ollie long fields from Trail Gear. Trail Gear hooked it up, helped us out with this. And we also have a Trail Gear truss and a Trail Gear front diff armor because we're gonna be out in the rocks of Johnson Valley, and there's gonna be a nice new 488 diff that we have from LC Engineering actually, that's going in here. So I wanna make sure all this is protected, the axle's strong, axle shafts are strong, and we have all the armor that we need to well, beat the hell out of this thing. So take this, this, and this, cut them all off, cut this sway bar mount off, weld on the truss. That'll go right about, yeah, like that. You can envision it, I bet. And then this just, boom. So this is all 1/4" steel. This is only 1/8, but this is just to reinforce the axle. This is the smash into rocks. And then some axle shafts, which take a long time. Set the preload on the bearings and everything in there. Make sure they're looking good. Once that's all done, we're done with the front axle. We can put it back and worry about the mechanicals of the rest of the truck. Woo! Dropping stuff. Did we hurt a lug nut? I hope we didn't. Looks all good. We only need 5 when we're going. So we are pulling the manual locking hubs off, which is part of the entire drive axle system on this front axle within here. Are these on lock or free? Oh, they're on lock. Let's try and free those up. All right, free. So it pulled it in. When it's locked, it pushes this out and it engages the gear in there and the axle is driven. So we'll need to pull this whole manual locking hub system apart. We're actually gonna pull the entire knuckle off the axle, then we'll pull the axle shafts out. Clearance the new axle housing for the new larger long field axle shafts. They rub in just a couple locations, so you take a die grinder in there, clearance it out, put it all back together, probably use a few new seals, maybe use new bearings depending. These bearings seem very tight, so I doubt I'm gonna adjust the bearings. We're really just worried about the axle shafts, so once that's all done, we'll be dialed and this thing will be hopefully strong enough for the 37s and locker we have in it. And now this is the bolts, nuts that hold the bearings all together. this thing's definitely been inside of recently. A, it's got an IFS hub swap. B, these bearings are very nice and tight. So we'll only be taking this apart to replace the axle shafts, and we'll put it right back together. Wouldn't it be funny if it already had chrome moly axle shafts in it? One last 54 millimeter nut. And then, yep, the whole wheel bearing assembly. Now we take the knuckle off, and hopefully everything's happy. Actually, we're leaving hindsight. Not hindsight, this is how you do it. We actually have to take this part off, leave the knuckle on, because the knuckle is what we're clearancing. So we'll pull all these bolts, get this off, and then clearance the knuckle. I mean, it kind of looks like there's a lot of metal in this one. The magnet says there's not that much metal, so. Smells like gear oil. So this is actually a full float axle, which means all of the weight floats on the bearings and not on the axle shaft. Even though this is a little Toyota mini truck axle, it's really, really strong and robust, and that's why they're so commonly used. The weak point is the axle shafts and the trunnion bearings, both of which there are upgrades for. But really, if you're going past a 40-inch tire, even up to a 40-inch tire, it's about as big as you want to go on a Toyota axle. I mean, that'd be cool if it was a chrome moly shaft, but it's got a seal and not a chrome moly shaft, I don't think. Just raw dogging this grease like I like it or something. Yeah, stock shaft. So we are done welding this. We stitched in to not warp the axle. Front diff armor is solid, truss is solid. We're good to go, looking good. Now we got this one side torn apart, tear the other side apart. Just a few more things, and we're pretty dialed on this front end. It's going a little quicker than I originally expected. Words are hard some days. So we have to clearance the inside of this housing for the big old Burfield joints going in. So that's what we're doing. Grinder, flap disc, clearance. We painted it with spray paint so that we could see where it contacted, and now we're here, grinding. All right, in here we have, yay, diff. Yep, it's got a locker. Still a 488, just like I remember. In the bucket. 410 diff for sale, 500 bucks, or best offer. Just kidding, I'll sell it for 3. Come on, come on. Hit it with a hammer. So I'm not very good at finish work. We got to put all these bolts on, put the axle shafts in. These are nuts also. We got to put the nuts in, axle shafts in, reassemble the knuckles all tonight before tomorrow, because tomorrow I have plans of getting some shocks on the front of this thing. This took a lot longer than I initially expected, but what doesn't in my world? I'm like, yep, I'll get that done today. Today might mean tonight. It still gets done. That thing's seated. So we'll do the same thing to the other side. Now they'll both be in there. Oh, yeah. Oh, that clip is not wanting to go in. Well, before we break it, be better this time. Go in. Click. Come here, you little short shaft. Get into your hole. Well. So last night, I had late night shop issues, which is where you run into a very small problem that becomes a very large problem. And one of the locking hubs just fell apart, and for whatever reason, wasn't going back together. My eyes were tired, my body was tired. So I went home and we're back. We assembled the thing, it's back to good. Now we have 2 locking hubs. This is the lock, and when you bring it to free, it brings it in, and it unlocks the hub. This pushes a gear in there that actually locks this hub to the axle shaft, which makes the axle shaft spin when the differential spins. So now we can finally put these 2 locking hubs on, and then this front axle is completely back together. We got our 488 gears in here, lunchbox locker, got the truss on, got the armor on, and now we have our locking hubs on. And now we can actually put this under the truck, flex it back out, and do shock tower stuff. Ow, it's so heavy. Think smarter, not harder. Bring the lift down. Down. Okay. Wow. So now that we have the U-bolts on, the axle back in, we'll get the steering all hooked up. I'm being silly and not remembering which way is righty-tighty. But we have this flat pitman arm, and you can see what that does for our pitman arm location. So this is dropped down, and it actually interferes with the leaf spring when we're flexing. So this will bring the pitman arm location up much further, and it will just allow for much more suspension articulation. So when we have this on, and this is from Sky's Off-Road Design, I believe they're the only ones who offer a flat pitman arm for Toyotas. When we get this on, we'll hook all the steering up, roll it outside, flex this thing out, measure for shocks in the front, bump stops in the rear, and we should be pretty set for the suspension side of things, and we can start thinking about all of the mechanicals and the rest of the stuff that we need to get done before we head to the lake bed, because it just snowed out of Johnson Valley, so maybe we'll make sure the heater works. Do not forget that our Patreon is live. Look at all this stuff that we are packing up to take to King of the Hammers, and it is about 10 hours before we leave, and I still have to put a power steering pump in this old girl. Needless to say, everything's going, well, just like it should be. But a bunch of behind the scenes footage and a bunch of behind the scenes shenanigans over on Patreon. It really helps us out. It's a direct help for us to get places, do things, and make videos. So if you can, support us there. If not, we have the merch live on the website. Thank you guys so much for watching. Back to the video. Look at that. If you followed the very first episode of this thing when we painted it, we were running into pitman arm clearance issues, and now we are not. So that is very good. We can measure for bump stops. I'm not even gonna put bump stops up front because the springs just tell us that they're done, they're maxed out. In the rear, we do need bump stops because, oh well, today this side is not hitting, but the other side was. With just a little more weight, it will. So we definitely don't want that. So I'll measure bump stops for this side, mirror it for the other side. This looks sick with the shock towers in here and everything. Really looks like a rock crawler now. Proper, if you ask me. We're measuring from the eyelet of this lower shock to the frame, since that's the only consistency we have right now, because we don't have a shock tower. And extended, we're looking at 19.5. I'm just gonna write it down right here. And we'll measure the compressed length on the other side, which is 10. We'll do the same thing on both sides. So we'll turn it around, flex that side out, and that'll give us the extended and collapsed length differences of the shock. We can use that information to make a judgment as to where we put the shock towers at right height. Hopefully it works out, because my math sometimes isn't math all the time. So for the bump stops under here, we're gonna go with 5 inches to the top of them. Gives us about 1/4 inch to play with, and we can trim the bump stops down a little bit if they end up being too tall. So that's what we'll do for our little thing. We're gonna offset them all the way to the outside of the spring perch, weld some 2x2 square tube with the cap, screw our bump stop onto that, and yeah, rear bump stops are dialed, front doesn't need bump stops, and we have our shock tower measurements. So this should be the last time we need to flex it out before we're flexing it out in 4-wheel drive with shocks installed. Now that we have flexed this thing out and determined that we need to install some rear bump stops, and we have all the numbers to install our front shocks, what we are gonna do is we're gonna measure where these are sitting right now at ride height, And it's looking like we only need about 4 inches of up travel and the rest will be down travel, which is kind of, I love that. I love setting up low rigs to where they have minimal up travel and maximum down travel, lower center of gravity, all the good things. What that is telling me is I'm gonna leave 5 inches of shock shaft exposed at ride height, and I should have plenty of travel down and plenty of travel up, and the front shocks shall not interfere with anything we have going on for flexing. First and foremost, we are gonna build these shock mounts. We're gonna build them out of plate. These are also going to double as coil buckets one day, so they're going to be built out of 3/16 super strong. We need to move this. This is our power steering reservoir. It's got to get out of the way for right now. We need to remove the power steering anyway because the pump is cooked. So we'll take the entire power steering system out while we get this done. Once this is all done, we'll get the power steering system back in and likely mount this to the shock tower. And yeah, it'll be shockingly a smooth ride when we're all done. Puns, they're fun. Yay! All right, so this is where it wants to be, and we want 5 inches of shock shaft showing. Down. Wow, all right, this shock is actually shockingly in good shape for being a free use shock. That's close. So right now we're sitting at 5.5, so we need to be 1/2 inch lower than that. So now we are pulling the wheels and tires back off because we want to make all the room that we can to build these shock towers. I have all the numbers that I believe I need to make the shock towers work. So we'll get the tire out of our way and start cutting metal. This is gonna be a big shock tower. I'm still not certain if I'm doing it out of plate or if I'm doing it out of tube. More than likely we'll do plate, but if tube makes sense, we'll do tube as well. Big old shock. I would literally use a CNC plasma cutter almost every single day here. So if you're listening and you have a CNC plasma cutter operation shop or something you want to showcase, I'm always building stupid brackets by hand and I could use it. Thank you. So first things first, we need to make our 4 shock tabs for our 2 shock brackets. So these are the tabs. I'm gonna drill some holes in them and hopefully we can get this done relatively quickly because I'm tired of working on shocks. I wanna work on the engine stuff now. I got so much pretty dress up stuff from LC Engineering and you know, I wanna get it on there. I want it to look good. This hopefully will work for what I'm thinking about doing. So what we have decided to do here is weld on a tube here. We're gonna go up to our shock mount here. We're gonna weld onto the one side and we're gonna come off the other side, a little bit more triangulated down to over here. So we are gonna spread the load throughout the frame. We're gonna do the best we can. And right now I'm gonna go notch tube because I already took numbers and now we are ready to get the tube in from here all the way up to that shock mount, I guess we could call it. If we do go to coilovers, we will end up plating this entire part of the frame. But for now, it's just a leaf spring shock mount, so it's gonna be just fine. Let's go notch this thing and we can move on to the next shock mount because this is taking way too much time. This is the design we decided to go with our shock tower. It was a lot of thinking. I was gonna do plate, I was gonna do plate and tube. We ended up doing a little bit of plate and mostly tube. These are about 17 inches tall. We're using a 14-inch shock. We actually only need just about 10 inches of travel, but we're using a 14 just in case we do link it. So we are setting this up for links in such that all we'd have to do is plate the frame and reinforce the tower and do a strut bar over the engine, and it would be good to go, or tie into some sort of cage that we have out here. I'm not sure if that will ever happen. So for now, we're not even going to plate the frame, because if I did plate the frame, it would be a whole nother fiasco of plating the frame all the way back to there. It's just too much to get into for this one, especially for just normal shock towers. So we'll put one reinforcement from the back of the shock tower to the chassis. It's good to go. And these are going all the way up into the engine bay, quite a ways into the engine bay. We should have way more shock than we'll ever need, so we're good to go there. We missed the master cylinder and the brake booster, so that's all good. And over here, we have a lot less to deal with. Over there, we had the power steering, the brakes, all that stuff. Over here is wide open, so we're just gonna do the same thing we did over there, over here. Once that's done, upper and lower shock mounts, front and rear are done, so we're done with the shocks. We can move on to the mechanicals. We can even hook the drive lines up and take this thing for a quick little test flex. I think that it's gonna go clack, 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 clack with those lunchbox lockers. So this is approximately where it goes. And now I just need you to weld it.
Me?
Yeah. Oh, it moved. All right, let's see if we can get some assistance out here. Last night we got a whole bunch done. We finished the shock hoops. I didn't paint them because I'm a doofus, but they are in. We got overspray over a few things while we were painting them up. We got the frame painted, all that's dialed. We got the axle in, most of that's bolted together. We do have a ton of stuff to finish in the engine bay. In the meantime, we also got the battery tray done. This is bolted in the back of the truck, so the battery doesn't go rolling out while we are bouncing around. We got the slider gussets on, which some people told me about. They're right here. It's just to really stiffen up the slider top to bottom on the frame so we don't have any frame distortion. Got those on every single one. And now what we're gonna do is get everything under here done. Hook up the drive lines, we're gonna hook up the brake lines, we're gonna get the wheels and tires mounted. We're gonna make this thing a roller runner driver. And once that's done, we can drop it down and mess with everything in the engine bay. We still have quite a bit to do, but it's not too late. We're only 5 days till we leave for Hammers, and this thing doesn't even have a windshield in it. So yeah, let's get this thing running and driving, and then we'll finish all the mechanical BS under the hood. All right. And the very last shock. Yay, shackles, shocks, things. One thing I didn't mention before is this new exhaust cut. It's hard to see, but this is basically pointing exhaust right into our cabin. So once we get the shock in, we'll rearrange this to where it at least blows it back behind the cabin so that we're not, you know, suffocating from exhaust inhalation. So playing with this exhaust, this is the tailpipe I cut off. It used to kind of exit right here, something like that. I'm not sure exactly, because this shock is very much so in the way, but it no longer is going to work. I just want the exhaust to sort of kind of come out this way towards the back of the vehicle. So we'll probably just cut this, cut that till it kind of sort of get close to looking decent, and then we'll MIG weld it, fill in some huge massive gaps like craters bigger than the Marianas Trench, and then and we will have an exhaust that won't suffocate us in the cab, because that's important. Exhaust gases do kill, like really. Butt exhaust or car exhaust, they're all deadly. They're all deadly. So this is about all the pipe we have to make this rear exhaust work, this in a straight. So my idea here is just get the exhaust away from the shock a little bit, come in with this U bend. We'll cut it halfway through the U, and we'll be somewhere over here, and we'll just make this straight, which we have that straight right there, to make it go all the way out, keep it nice tight to the frame here, and still exit outside the vehicle. So we'll prep this up, get all of this welded together as a unit, cut it all, kind of get that all there, and then we'll weld it to the existing muffler, one little pass, and we're done. This piece will go here. So now that we have it tacked, we can simply break those tacks, weld all this out, put it back up there, weld it to that. We're good to go. Muffler back tailpipe thing done. I don't love it. I don't hate it. Kind of hate it. I really don't love it. So we have our bump stop here. It's 2 1/8 inches. We cut this, that's 3 inches. Together they are 5 1/8, which is just over what we need for our bump stop. We cut these plates that fit right inside these. We're gonna bolt them to a bolt first. We're gonna weld the nut on this side, and then when we're done with that, we can weld this plate to this, and our bump stops will just thread on and thread off. So we can change them out if needed, adjust the height if needed, all sorts of fun stuff. So that'll conclude everything underneath this thing. We're done. We can move on to the mechanicals and yeah, get this thing dialed for hammers. Sick. I'm probably gonna have to take this wheel off. No, that's plenty weld. And just like that, we have our bump stops. And I decided to turn this so it doesn't get so hot being too close to the exhaust. So all of this should be dialed now, and we can, yeah, we're done. We're done down here. Believe it or not, that's the easy way. Last night we stayed up very late, too late, getting all sorts of little things done on this. Like we have our winch fully wired and it's fully cordless. That is so sick. I hate searching for the remote being connected to the winch. That just makes using the winch super easy. We almost put on our rock lights, but I realized I don't have enough rivets. We did get our LED whips on, which is super trick. These are gonna be, well, obviously you'll see me from miles away. We got the rear bumper on, and like I said, everything underneath is mounted, done. We are ready mechanically underneath this thing. In the back here, we have some extra parts, and we got our battery mounted. We started wiring some things. We need to get the fuse block in there so that everything is fused. Obviously, we need to clean up a little bit, but now we're focusing on everything under the hood. So LC Engineering, as always, came in, made sure we were taken care of, and they sent us the sickest care package. We have, of course, one of their valve covers in a beautiful red. Gonna leave that in the bag so we don't get it scratched up. We have plug wires, routing, billet oil cap, filler, billet hardware, and we have billet half moons. So this basically takes care of everything for valve cover and spark plugs and wires. And then of course, we had to get some shirts because LC Engineering has some pretty sweet shirts. This one is my wife's. She ordered, that's the back, that's the front. Since 1985. Coincidental that this is in 1985 and they're since 1985? I think not. And then I ordered what I would consider a nice shirt for me because it's way too light. Like I'm probably staining it right now. But this is the back, super sweet sunset, and that is their Project 85. And then the front, just typical Toyota colors. So yeah, super stoked on all the stuff we have from LC Engineering. As always, they've been a huge supporter of us, Elevated Overland, before we were even Elevated Fabworks, and now they're continuing to support us over here at Elevated Fabworks. So go ahead, go over to LC Engineering's Instagram, show them some love, say Elevated Fabworks sent me here, and buy some stuff because they have awesome stuff and free stickers in every order, as it should be. You order stuff, you're really ordering stickers, and this is all free. So we need to get all of this stuff on there, trick that out. We need to build an air intake. We need to replace our power steering pump. We need to mount our power steering reservoir. We need to replace the starter, and all that needs to happen today because tomorrow I'm hoping to take this thing for a shakedown run, go and beat it out on the Glade here in Farmington. Yeah, let's dive in. So the first task of today is get this starter pulled out so we can get the core returned and we can get our 40 bucks back because 40 bucks is 40 bucks. And I need that 40 bucks for King of the Hammer's gas fund. And the starter's out. And slip this up in here. The starter works every time, look. Yay. Ooh, okay. A little fan rubbage on some stuff. On this power steering system, we actually have to mount the reservoir because, well, there's a shock tower in the way, and where it used to mount, I kind of cut out because it was completely cooked. So we'll drain this power steering fluid because I did fill it with fluid. What? I guess maybe I'll put some fluid in it and see if it works. Fun fact, old Toyotas use even new Toyotas use ATF for power steering fluid. Let's see if our power steering works. Oh, buttery smooth. All right, cool. Now we just have an extra pump. I'm okay with that. Now I need to figure out how I want to mount this. I used one of the existing mounting holes, and I think I'm just gonna drill another hole right here, put a rib nut in, and use 2 of the 3 holes. For now, this is gonna work. It's gonna be fast, only requires 1 rib nut, and we can move on from the power steering system. And just like that, this is mounted good enough. The hoses actually gave it a little bit of a rigidity. Power steering system is done. So now the task is to clear everything off of this valve cover area, because we need to pull this valve cover, clean all the surfaces, and put in our new LC Engineering powder coated valve cover. So we'll pull the valve cover, get all this crap off, pull the plug wires, pull the plugs, put new plugs in, get a radiator in this thing, some coolant, take this thing for its first inaugural test rip to the DMV so we can get it registered. I have registered 4 vehicles already this last month. It has not been cheap, folks. We're gonna have shirts live this week. Actually, I think they already are live. Go buy a shirt, it helps. Yay! Boom. Worth every dime. You want, when you pop your hood, you want people to be like, dang, not like, dang, it's a 22 RE. So the LC Engineering valve cover calls for slightly longer studs, and they include new ones, so may as well replace them. Oh, it looks so good. All right, we'll get the back one in, and then now we can put the valve cover on. The beautiful moment of truth. Valve cover studs in, and tighten this bad boy down. Man, that thing looks sick. Also, I just want to take note, these are 20-plus-year-old LCE headers, and they're fine. They're looking great. They still function as they should. No rust, no corrosion. I mean, it's 20 years old, and they're still, look at it. Look at it. So that says a lot about LCE's quality. That's why I continue to use them on nearly every build that we have here. Spiffy looking headers. Gotta make the plug wires look as nice as the engine bay, you know? These are the old plugs, actually some NGK iridiums, and they don't look that bad. But since we're here, we're gonna put some NGK not iridiums in. It's fine, it's an old 22RE. I got yelled at last time that I put anti-seize on these, so this time I'm not gonna do it. And if in a year, I try and pull these spark plugs and they don't wanna come out, I'm gonna come at the comment section and I'm gonna be like, you know what? I didn't do it and I shouldn't have ever listened to you guys. This thing is looking mighty fine under here. We got the billet loom, we got the valve cover painted red, powder coated red. That's all from LC Engineering. They're always making sure we're dialed in here. Billet half moons. I mean, that is a tricked out 22R POS engine bay, all right? Now we need to focus on making an intake. So this is how we're gonna do it. It's gonna be fantastic. Excuse me, sir. Get it, get it. All right, that's enough. Bring it here. So everyone has been complaining that we haven't properly introduced the dogs. Drop it. Sit. Oh, excuse me, sir. That's Colby. He's not the smartest tool in the shed, but he's a lover. And this is Carnage. He's way too smart for his own good. See, all he's interested in is ball. Sit. Lie down. He rolled over before I even asked. And he's just mad. And this is Lily. This is Brad's dog. So this is the wolf pack. Go lay down. Hush up. So this is what I was saying before the dogs rudely interrupted me. No, I'm kidding. So we'll just cut an inch off of this and we'll weld it here. And then we'll have just a little stubby air intake, boom, just like that. And hopefully we can find somewhere for it to fit in the engine bay. While that extremely hot piece that I just made cools off, we're going to put the cooling system in. And by cooling system, I mean radiator. That's really all we got left. Coolant is finished. We are going to install the windshield. We are no professional windshield installation team, but I got a bottle of windshield urethane. We're gonna squirt it everywhere. We're gonna tape this windshield where it needs to go, and that's that. So wish us luck, boys. Oh yeah. You one of those power little caulking guns? Definitely in my future. Alright, let's put. I'll hand it to you. We're so. I don't know. Oh. Someone's yelling at me right now. This is not what you're supposed to do, I guarantee it. And I do not want this windshield to leak, so we're just window welding the whole thing over again. If I ever have to get this out of here, I'm repainting my car. This is not how to set a windshield. Out of this whole thing, I would say this is probably the least. I guess, you know what, this is not informative. It's informing you exactly how not to do this. So I got a little bit of contact there. Let's see how long that lasts. But for now, I think this is gonna work for the weekend. Last night we stayed up insanely late getting all the odds and ends done on this thing, including these beautiful LP9s from Baja Designs. And if that wasn't enough, we went ahead and put some squadrons on here as well. So we have all of the front lighting that we need. We actually got full rock lighting under this thing too. Don't tell Baja we didn't use their lights, but we did. You know, you gotta do what you gotta do sometimes. All in all, this thing is a wrap. We have front and rear lockers, 488 gears, front and rear, 14-inch shocks front and rear, Chevy 63s in the rear, rear up front, springs. The interior, well, it's still a total turd, but we have a carpet kit in and it makes it look kind of not turdy. Dual cases, 4.7 in the rear case, W56. We did put a oil pressure gauge in here. We don't have a coolant temp sensor. We don't have a tachometer. We don't have a speedometer, but we do have a fuel gauge. What more do you need than a fuel gauge and an oil pressure gauge? You know, you're good. Huge shout out to all the companies help make this happen. LC Engineering, Trail Gear for the long fields, Baja Designs for all the lights. I mean, I can't, thank you guys, all of you. Without further ado, I guess it's time before we go ahead and transport this almost 12 hours to Johnson Valley. We're gonna go here locally to some of the best rock crawling in the world and go test this thing out. Out of low into normal low for a little more speed. It's gonna be Alright, I really miss rock crawling. We're not even rock crawling, we're just sandbogging right now, but let's go get these rocks. This is most definitely the climb that busted my wife's 4Runner. It looks a little more intimidating than I remember, but I also remember knowing for sure that I was not gonna make it up it. We got lockers and 4-wheel drive and fresh paint. What could go wrong?
It's not folding over the top of the ridge.
Not even a little bit. No, I'm at like 30 pounds. Also, tell them, who are you? What is your name?
I'm Enoch, one part of Mo Leisure X Ventures.
This guy's my buddy. So if you don't know, when I was just getting the Sunraider finished to restoration level, I was crunching to make Overland Expo West. And Enoch and Delia came out for 2 weeks and helped me until like 1 in the morning every single night to get that thing done. These guys are awesome. So
and then I died for like a week after that.
Yeah, we all died after that. But anyway, they're awesome. Go give them a follow, Mo Leisure X Ventures on Instagram and on YouTube. I guess follow along with Welcome to the Outdoors because they're doing a full build series on their Toyota Chinook on a 2023 Nissan. It's cool. It's cool. A Nissan Frontier.
JDM, baby.
It's almost a Toyota.
We're all in the family. thing says I'm in danger.
It says we're way past the recommended slope. Yeah, it just trust us. It says it's bad news in here. Hey! Bump stops work! Woo! First time I really tested them. We have actually too much bump stop. Hey, look at that. We lost the lug nut. I was literally thinking about this. We're down one lug nut. We'll tighten the other 5 extra and torque the rest. It's working. We're flexed out way up there. We got shock shaft showing. We're flexed down way over here. Shock shaft showing. Bump stopping. Tires are down. We're almost losing wheels because I forgot to torque them. Yeah, this is sick. It works. We went up, we rock climbed, we did the sand, we did the highway, we hit all of the bases, and it all worked really well. Like I said, I'm gonna say it one more time. Thank you Factory 55 and Warren for the winch. Thank you Baja Designs for the lights. Thank you Trail Gear for the freaking chromoly axles. Thank you Skies Off-Road Design. And most importantly, thank you LC Engineering for making sure that we always have what we need to get where we're going. Yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, like button, subscribe button. There's gonna be a ton more. We're going to King of the Hammers, like next video. Next video is gonna be a King of the Hammers video. This, probably maybe getting to body damage. It's a good possibility. We might lose a tire if I don't remember to torque things. You never know on this channel. So, thank you guys for tuning in. See you later.
I was gonna say, I think it might be a better idea just to...
I'm just gonna, this is like in the outtakes section probably, but this one's just coming off. These are all tight still. That one fell off on the road. This one, it's gonna fall off on the road because I don't have it. I'm bringing tools next time. Don't judge me.